The hunting grounds of Sector 12 had claimed 43 vessels in the last solar rotation. Everyone knew it. Everyone avoided it. And yet, there we were, drifting through the asteroid field like idiots with a death wish. My name is Vekran, and I'm what you humans would call a scout. I work for the Galactic Commerce Guild, which is just a fancy way of saying I get paid to fly into dangerous places and report back whether they're safe for trade routes. Spoiler alert, they rarely are. But the pay is good, and I've got 6 mouths to feed back on Thesser Prime, so here I am, risking my 3 hearts for a paycheck. Vekran, I'm picking up something on the thermal scanners, Jorik said from the co-pilot seat. Jorik is my partner, a Krellian with too many eyes and not enough common sense. He's good at his job, though, most of the time. Define something, I replied, adjusting our trajectory to avoid a particularly large chunk of space debris. The cockpit lights flickered, casting strange shadows across his blue-scaled face. Big, really big, and it's moving. Nothing good ever came from things that moved in dead zones. How big are we talking? Class 7, maybe Class 8. I felt my throat sacs deflate. Class 7 meant apex predator. Class 8 meant we were about to become a very expensive snack. Get the shields up, now. The ship hummed as the energy barriers engaged, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Whatever was out there had torn through military-grade hulls. Our little scout vessel was basically a tin can with delusions of grandeur. That's when I saw it. The creature emerged from behind a massive asteroid, and for a moment, my brain simply refused to process what my eyes were showing me. It was enormous, easily 3 times the size of our ship, with a body that seemed to shift between solid matter and something else entirely. Bioluminescent patterns pulsed along its segmented form, creating hypnotic spirals of blue and violet light. Its head, if you could call it that, was all teeth and sensory organs, with multiple sets of jaws that opened in ways that defied conventional biology. This was a void serpent, the oldest predator species in known space. They'd been hunting in the dark between stars for millions of years before most civilizations figured out fire. We're dead, Jorik whispered. We're so incredibly dead. Shut up and let me think, I snapped, though honestly, I agreed with his assessment. Void serpents didn't negotiate. They didn't warn. They just attacked, consumed, and moved on. The creature circled us slowly, deliberately. I could see smaller organisms clinging to its hide, symbiotic parasites that fed on whatever scraps the serpent left behind. Its movements were graceful despite its size, each undulation of its massive body precisely calculated. Then it stopped. Just stopped. The bioluminescent patterns on its skin shifted from blue to a deep crimson, which, according to the xenobiology texts, meant it was about to strike. I gripped the control stick so hard I thought my claws would puncture through the material. Should I engage the weapons? Jorik asked, his voice cracking. With what? Our pulse cannon? That thing eats starships for breakfast. We'd just make it angry. So what do? We pray to whatever gods still listen, and we prepare to die with dignity. But the void serpent didn't attack. Instead, it tilted its massive head, studying us with eyes that glowed like dying suns. There was intelligence there, ancient and vast, weighing us like we were specimens in some cosmic laboratory. That's when the proximity alarm went off. What now? I shouted, checking the scanner display. Another ship, Jorik said, his multiple eyes widening. Small, single-occupant vessel. It's coming in fast, really fast. Are they insane? Don't they see the serpent? The new vessel streaked past us, a sleek design I didn't recognize. It was matte black, with none of the usual running lights or identification markers. Pirates? Smugglers? Either way, they were about to become the serpent's appetizer. But something strange happened. The void serpent reacted, not with aggression, but with what I can only describe as curiosity. Its body language changed, became less predatory, and more attentive. The crimson patterns faded back to blue, then shifted to a color I'd never seen documented before. Something between gold and white. The black vessel executed a barrel roll that should have been impossible at that speed, came to a complete stop in front of the serpent, and just hovered there, waiting. "Is this really happening?" Jorek muttered. "Am I having one of those hallucinations again? Did I accidentally inhale spore dust from the cargo bay? If you are, then I'm having the same one." A hatch opened on the side of the black vessel. Someone was coming out. Someone in a pressure suit. "No way," I breathed. "No possible way." The figure that emerged was bipedal, relatively small compared to the serpent. They wore a customized environmental suit that looked like it had been through several wars and somehow won all of them. Patches of repair work covered various sections, and I could see what looked like blast scoring across the chest plate. They just floated there in the void, staring down the galaxy's oldest predator. The serpent moved closer, its jaws opening to reveal rows upon rows of teeth that could shred titanium like paper. The figure didn't retreat, didn't even flinch. They raised one gloved hand, palm out, in what might have been a greeting or a warning. I couldn't tell. Then the figure did something that made my blood run cold. They removed their helmet. "They're going to die," Jorek said flatly. "Exposure to hard vacuum will kill them in seconds." "What species are they? Do they not understand basic physics?" But the figure didn't die. Instead, I saw features I'd only read about in intelligence reports and trade gossip. Smooth skin, bilateral symmetry, forward-facing eyes, hair that moved in the absence of wind, caught in their suit's life support field. A human. The human stared at the void serpent, and the serpent stared back. For a moment that stretched into eternity, neither moved. I realized I'd been holding my breath, all three of my lungs burning for air. Then I saw it. Something in the human's eyes. Even from this distance, even through the chaos of my own panic, I could see it clearly through our visual enhancers. No fear, not even a trace of it. But it wasn't arrogance either. It was something else, something that made the hair on my neck plate stand up. It was the look of someone who had stared into the abyss so many times that the abyss got uncomfortable and looked away first. The human smiled. Actually smiled. The void serpent, this ancient creature that had terrorized space lanes since before my species had left our home world, did something I would never have believed if I hadn't witnessed it myself. It retreated. Just a little. Just enough to create distance. "What in the 16 hells is happening?" Jorek demanded. The humans slowly put their helmet back on, the gesture casual, almost dismissive. They turned their back on the serpent, an action that should have been suicidal, and started returning to their vessel. The serpent watched them go. Its bioluminescent patterns had shifted again, this time to a soft purple that pulsed in rhythmic waves. I'd studied these creatures. I knew what that color meant. Respect. The void serpent was showing respect. The human's vessel powered up, and I expected them to flee. Any sane being would have taken the opportunity to get as far away as possible. But no. The ship maneuvered slowly, deliberately, until it was facing us. A communication request pinged on our console. I stared at it like it might explode. "Should I answer? Do we have a choice?" Jorek replied. "Fair point." I accepted the transmission. The voice that came through was female, speaking in Galactic Common with an accent I didn't recognize. "You two should probably get out of here. The serpent won't stay calm forever, and you're leaking coolant from your port engine. That's like ringing a dinner bell for these things." I checked our systems. She was right. A microfracture I hadn't noticed. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "Just someone passing through. Name's Victoria. Victoria Rains. I suggest you seal that leak and plot a course out of this sector." The serpent's hunting pattern usually takes it deeper into the asteroid field in about 10 minutes, so you've got a window. How do you know that? There was a pause, then something that might have been a laugh. Let's just say we've met before. And she'd survived? That was impossible. Nobody survived multiple encounters with these things. They were the reason entire star systems stayed dark, the reason trade routes took years-long detours. Why did it back down? Jorik asked, leaning toward the comm unit. Serpents don't retreat. They attack or they ignore. There's no middle ground. You're right about that, Victoria said. But here's something they don't teach you in xenobiology classes. Predators recognize other predators. It's instinct. Written into the DNA of every hunting species in the galaxy. That serpent didn't back down because it was afraid. It backed down because it recognized what I am. And what are you? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Quieter. Harder. I'm human. And out here, in the dark between the stars, we're not the prey anymore. Before I could respond, her ship's engines flared, and she was gone. Just vanished into the black, moving with speed that our sensors could barely track. I looked at Jorik. Jorik looked at me. Did that really just happen? He asked. I think so, but I'm not sure I believe. The void serpent was still there, watching us with those ancient eyes. The purple glow had faded back to the standard blue, but it made no move to approach. After what felt like an hour but was probably only a minute, it turned away, its massive body sliding back into the asteroid field like a shadow dissolving at dawn. I engaged the engines and plotted the fastest course out of Sector 12. You're going to report this, right? Jorik asked, as we cleared the danger zone. Report what? That a human talked down a void serpent? That one of the galaxy's apex predators showed respect to some random pilot in a patched-up ship? They'd think I'd lost my mind. They'd ground me. Maybe even commit me to a psychiatric facility. So we say nothing? I thought about it. About Victoria Rains and her lack of fear. About the way the serpent had recognized something in her that made it think twice. About her words. We're not the prey anymore. We report the serpent sighting, I said finally. Standard encounter. It moved on. No engagement. We don't mention the human. And? If someone asks about our vessel logs? The communication records? I reached over and deleted the transmission from our system. What communication? Jorik's mandibles clicked in, what passed for a Krellian grin. You know, for someone who claims to follow regulations, you're pretty good at bending them. I'm good at staying alive. That's what matters. We flew in silence for a while, putting distance between us and the hunting grounds. But my mind wouldn't stop racing. I'd been doing this job for 15 years. I'd seen things that would give most beings nightmares, but I'd never seen anything like what happened back there. Humans were relatively new to the galactic community. They'd only achieved faster-than-light travel about 60 years ago, which was nothing in cosmic terms. Most species treated them like curious children, interesting but ultimately irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. But Victoria Rains hadn't acted like someone irrelevant. She'd acted like someone who belonged out there in the dark, who understood its rules better than species that had been spacefaring for millennia. Vekran, Jorik said quietly, interrupting my thoughts. What? I've been thinking. What if she's not the only one? What if there are more humans like her out there? The thought sent a chill through all three of my hearts. Then the galaxy is about to get a lot more interesting, I replied. And scarier, I thought, but didn't say. Because if humans could make void serpents back down, what else could they do? What other rules could they break? We made it back to the guild station 6 hours later. I filed my report, received my payment, and tried to forget about the whole incident. Tried being the key word. Because 3 days later, I heard something that made me realize Victoria Rains wasn't an anomaly. A cargo hauler had been attacked by a pack of razor swarms in Sector 8. Razor swarms were bad news, coordinated hunters that stripped ships down to their frames in minutes. The hauler should have been destroyed. Instead, witnesses reported that a small, unmarked vessel had appeared, engaged the entire swarm single-handedly, and drove them off. The pilot had been human. A week after that, a distress call came from a mining colony under siege by pirates. The local militia was outnumbered and outgunned. They were preparing for the worst when 3 human ships arrived. No military markings, no official authorization. They just showed up, dismantled the pirate fleet in under an hour, and left before anyone could thank them properly. Stories started circulating. Whispers in station bars and trade posts. Humans doing impossible things in impossible places. Humans surviving encounters that should have killed them. Humans treating the dangerous regions of space like their personal playground. And I realized something that should have been obvious from the start. We'd been thinking about humans all wrong. We'd been comparing them to ourselves, measuring them by our standards, but humans didn't evolve in the safe parts of their world. They didn't develop civilization in peaceful valleys or calm seas. They came from a planet that tried to kill them at every opportunity. Predators, diseases, extreme weather, geological disasters. Earth had thrown everything at humanity, and humanity had not just survived but thrived. They'd climbed to the top of their food chain through sheer stubbornness and creativity, and now they'd brought that same attitude to space. I thought about Victoria Rains standing in the void, staring down a void serpent with nothing but confidence and a smile. I thought about the look in her eyes that had made a millions-year-old predator hesitate, the look that said, "I'm not your prey." And I realized that maybe, just maybe, we'd all underestimated what humans were capable of. We'd welcomed them to the Galactic community with patronizing smiles and helpful advice, treating them like novices who needed guidance. But humans didn't need our guidance. They'd been fighting for survival since before they could make fire. Space was just another frontier to them, another challenge to overcome. I thought about my 6 children back on Thesser Prime, living in a galaxy that had suddenly become much more complicated. And, for the first time in my career, I wondered if maybe the dangerous sectors of space weren't going to stay dangerous for much longer. Not because the predators were leaving, but because humans had arrived. 4 months had passed since my encounter with Victoria Rains, and the galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The Guild sent me on another assignment, this time to investigate a derelict station orbiting a gas giant in the outer reaches. Station Gamma 9 had gone silent 3 weeks ago, and given its strategic importance as a refueling depot, someone needed to find out why. I'd requested a different partner for this run. Jorik had retired early, claimed he wanted to spend more time with his brood. I didn't blame him. After what we'd witnessed, the appeal of sitting behind a desk had grown considerably stronger. My new partner was a Yiltaran named Mox, all business and sharp angles. Her species didn't do small talk, which suited me fine. We'd barely exchanged 20 words during the 6-hour flight to Gamma 9. "Station's intact," Mox reported as we approached. "No visible damage to the hull. Life support systems offline." "Something's wrong here." "Everything about this is wrong," I muttered, bringing us in for docking. The airlock cycled with a hiss that echoed too loudly in the silence. Our helmet lights cut through the darkness as we entered the main corridor. Emergency lighting flickered occasionally, casting everything in a sickly red glow. "Power's at 15%, Mox said, checking her wrist scanner. "Backup generators are functional, but someone shut down the main reactor deliberately. Why would anyone do that? To hide. Or to trap something." That was a cheerful thought. We moved deeper into the station, our boots magnetized to the floor in the low gravity. Signs of evacuation were everywhere. Personal belongings scattered in corridors, half-eaten meals left in the cafeteria, doors sealed from the outside. "Mox, you seeing this?" She nodded, examining a sealed doorway. Blast doors engaged throughout the entire residential sector. Someone locked everyone out, or locked something in. My throat sacs tightened. We should call for backup. With what? Communications array is fried. We're on our own until we finish the survey. Of course we were. We made our way to the command center, forcing open doors that had been sealed for weeks. The main terminal was still active, running on emergency power. I accessed the logs while Mox kept watch. What I found made my blood run cold. The station logs showed everything had been normal until 3 weeks ago. Then the sensors had detected something approaching. Something big that hadn't responded to hails. The crew had gone to defensive stations, prepared for anything. What they hadn't been prepared for was a breeding cluster of void serpents. Sweet, merciful stars, I breathed, scrolling through the panicked final entries. There were 5 of them, 5 serpents converging on this location. That's impossible, Mox said flatly. Serpents are solitary hunters. They don't gather. Ever. And the crew knew they couldn't fight them off. Hoped the serpents would lose interest and move on. Did it work? I checked the timestamps. The logs end 2 weeks ago. Either everyone's dead or... A sound echoed through the station. Metal scraping against metal. Coming from somewhere deep in the structure. Mox's weapon was out instantly. Or they're still here. We followed the sound through maintenance passages and cargo bays, eventually reaching the central observation deck. The massive windows looked out onto the swirling clouds of the gas giant below, and there, visible in the planet's reflected light, were shapes. 4 void serpents circled the station in a slow, hypnotic pattern. "Where's the 5th one?" I asked. The answer came as a shadow detached itself from the station's exterior hull. The 5th serpent had been clinging to the station itself, camouflaged against the dark metal. It was smaller than the others, probably younger, but still large enough to swallow our ship whole. "We need to leave," Mox said. "Right now." But before we could move, lights flared across the observation deck. Not emergency lights, something else. Computer screens activating, showing camera feeds from throughout the station. And there, in the main docking bay where we'd left our ship, was another vessel. The same matte black design I'd seen 4 months ago. "No way," I whispered. A figure appeared on one of the screens, moving through the docking bay with purposeful strides. Even in the grainy footage, I recognized that patched environmental suit. "You know this person?" Mox demanded. "It's complicated, but if I'm right, we might actually survive this." Victoria Rains made her way through the station with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was going. Within minutes, she'd reached the observation deck. The door slid open, and there she was, helmet under one arm, looking completely unbothered by the fact that 5 void serpents were circling outside. "Vekrin," she said, her tone casual. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon. You really need to stop taking jobs in dangerous sectors. How do you know my name?" She tapped the side of her helmet. "Did some research after our last meeting. Guild Scouts have public records. You've got an impressive survival rate, by the way. 87% mission completion, with 0 casualties. That's rare in your line of work. What are you doing here?" "Same thing as you. Probably. Investigating why this station went dark. Though I'm guessing you've figured that part out by now." She walked to the observation windows, gazing at the serpents outside. "Beautiful, aren't they? In a terrifying, nightmare-inducing sort of way." "Beautiful." Mox's voice was sharp with disbelief. "Those things have killed thousands. They're monsters." Victoria's expression shifted, became harder. "No, they're survivors. Just like everything else out here trying to stay alive in a universe that doesn't care whether you exist or not." "The crew," I said. "Are they alive?" "Most of them? Yes. They sealed themselves in the lower cargo holds when the serpents arrived. Smart thinking, actually. The holds are lead-lined. Block thermal signatures. The serpents couldn't detect them. Then why are the creatures still here? If there's no prey? Because this isn't a hunting ground. Victoria interrupted. It's a breeding site. The gas giant's magnetic field creates unique radiation patterns. Void serpents use it to accelerate their reproductive cycles. These 5 have been here for weeks, and they're not leaving until the process is complete. Mox stepped forward. How do you know all this? Serpent biology is classified information, military-grade data. Victoria smiled, but there was no humor in it. Let's just say I've had a lot of time to study them up close. More time than most people get. Mostly because most people don't survive long enough to take notes. So what's the plan? I asked. We can't just leave the crew here. No, we can't. Which is why I'm going to convince the serpents to relocate. I stared at her. Mox stared at her. Even the station's AI, if it had been conscious, probably would have stared at her. Convince them, I repeated slowly. You're going to convince 5 apex predators to move. Yep. How? Victoria pulled something from her suit's utility belt. It looked like a standard signal beacon, but modified with additional components I didn't recognize. This broadcasts at a frequency serpents find extremely irritating. It won't hurt them, but it'll make staying here very uncomfortable. They'll relocate to a different breeding site. And you know this will work because? Because? I've done it before. 3 times, actually. Turns out void serpents are surprisingly reasonable when you speak their language. She moved toward the airlock, but I grabbed her arm. Wait, last time, you said predators recognize other predators. What did you mean by that? Victoria looked at my hand on her arm, then up at my face. Her eyes were calm, patient, but underneath I saw something else. Something ancient and tired. Your species evolved on a world with 2 suns and mild seasons, she said quietly. You had natural predators, sure, but you learned to avoid them, outsmart them. You built civilization in the safe places and only ventured into danger when necessary. She gently removed my hand from her arm. Humans didn't have that luxury. We evolved alongside predators that were faster, stronger, better equipped than us. We should have gone extinct a dozen times over, but we didn't. You want to know why? I nodded, unable to speak. Because we became better predators than anything nature could throw at us. We learned to hunt in packs, to use tools, to think 3 steps ahead of everything trying to kill us. We turned the tables so completely that by the time we developed agriculture, we'd already driven most of our competitors to extinction. Not through strength or speed, but through sheer stubborn refusal to die. She moved to the airlock, sealing her helmet in place. The serpent recognized that in me. It saw something, it understood. A hunter, a survivor, and it made a choice that most prey species never get to make. It chose to walk away. The airlock cycled, and she was gone, moving across the station's exterior with practiced ease. We watched through the observation windows as she positioned herself between the station and the circling serpents. She activated the beacon. The effect was immediate. All 5 serpents reacted, their bioluminescent patterns flaring from blue to angry red. They converged on Victoria's position, jaws opening, ready to eliminate the source of their discomfort. She's going to die, Mox said. But Victoria didn't run. She held her position. One hand on the beacon, the other held up in that same palm-out gesture I'd seen before. The serpents closed in, surrounded her completely, their massive bodies creating a cage of teeth and ancient hunger. Then, something extraordinary happened. The largest serpent, the one I assumed was the breeding matriarch, moved closer to Victoria. Its head lowered until it was level with the tiny human floating in the void. For a moment, they stayed like that. Predator and human, separated by nothing but vacuum and circumstance. The serpent's patterns shifted. Red faded to purple, then to that same gold-white color I'd seen before. Understanding. The creature turned away, its massive body undulating as it moved toward open space. The others followed, one by one, until all 5 had left the station's vicinity. Within minutes, They'd vanished into the dark, heading deeper into the system. Victoria deactivated the beacon and returned to the station. "How?" Mox demanded when Victoria cycled back through the airlock. "How did you do that?" I asked nicely. Victoria replied, removing her helmet. "And I promised them I'd find them a better breeding site, one without inconvenient space stations in the way. There's a nebula about 2 light-years from here with similar radiation signatures. I'll guide them there once we evacuate the crew." Over the next 3 hours, we worked to extract the station's survivors from the lower holds. 47 crew members, scared but alive. They looked at Victoria with a mixture of awe and confusion, unable to comprehend what they'd witnessed. As the evacuation ships arrived, Victoria prepared to leave. "Wait," I called out. "I need to know something. Why do you do this? Risk your life in places like this? You could be anywhere, doing anything. Why here?" She paused at her ship's boarding ramp, considering the question. "Because someone has to," she said finally. "Your species, the Krellians, the Yilterans, all the established civilizations, you've built your societies in the safe zones. You've got rules and territories and treaties. That's good. That's smart." She looked up at the stars visible through the docking bay's atmospheric shield. "But there are places out here where your rules don't reach. Places where the old things hunt, where the universe shows its teeth. Someone needs to be in those places. Someone needs to speak the language of survival that everything else out here understands. And that's humans? That's us. We spent 200,000 years learning how to survive on a planet that actively tried to kill us. Now we're applying those lessons out here, making the dark places a little less dark, making the monsters think twice before they attack." She climbed into her ship, then paused at the hatch. "Tell your guild something for me. Tell them the frontier isn't empty anymore. Tell them humans are out here, and we're not going anywhere. The galaxy's got enough prey. What it needs now are shepherds." Her ship launched, maneuvering with grace that shouldn't have been possible for something that size. I watched until she vanished from the sensors, heading toward the nebula to fulfill her promise to creatures that had terrorized space lanes for millennia. Mox stood beside me, her angular features thoughtful. "Your species has a saying," she said quietly, "about the abyss staring back. I never understood it until now." "What do you mean?" "Humans stared into the abyss of their own world for so long that when they finally reached the stars, they'd already seen worse. The things that scare us? They're just Tuesday afternoon for humans." I thought about Victoria, facing down 5 void serpents without flinching, about the way she'd spoken to them, not as prey begging for mercy, but as an equal demanding respect. "The galaxy's changing," I said. "We're not the only ones calling the shots anymore. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" I watched the stars where Victoria's ship had disappeared, thinking about all the dangerous sectors, all the hunting grounds, all the places where good beings feared to go. "I think," I said slowly, "it might be the best thing that ever happened to us. We've been avoiding the monsters for so long we forgot there was another option. We forgot what it means to stand your ground and make the monsters back down. And humans, remember? Humans never forgot, because for them, backing down meant extinction, and they chose to fight instead." 6 months later, I attended a guild council meeting where representatives from 40 different species gathered to discuss the human situation. That's what they called it, the human situation. Like humans, we're a problem that needed solving. I listened to politicians and military commanders debate restrictions, containment policies, ways to limit human expansion into contested territories. They talked about humans like they were unruly children who needed supervision. Then, a communication came through. Visual feed from Sector 19, where a colony ship carrying 5,000 civilians had suffered catastrophic engine failure in Shadewalker territory. Shadewalkers made void serpents look friendly. The colony ship had less than an hour before the life support failed completely. No rescue vessels could reach them in time. Everyone in that council chamber knew what would happen next. We'd lose 5,000 souls, and there was nothing we could do about it, except a message came through from the colony ship's captain. 3 words that made the entire council fall silent. Humans are here. The visual feed showed 6 unmarked human vessels engaging a pack of 12 shade walkers. No fancy weapons, no overwhelming firepower. Just skill, coordination, and a complete refusal to let anyone die on their watch. The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, all 12 shadewalkers had fled, and every single person on that colony ship survived. The council chamber erupted into arguments. Some called for regulations, others demanded answers. A few suggested alliance. I stood up and walked out. I didn't need to be part of that conversation anymore, because I'd learned something out there in the dark, between the stars. Something the council would figure out eventually, whether they liked it or not. The galaxy had spent millions of years divided into predators and prey. Everything knew its place, understood its role. Predators hunted, prey hid or died, and the universe turned according to those simple rules. Then humans showed up and said, "No, those aren't the only options." They'd carved out a 3rd category. Not predator, not prey, but something else entirely. Protector, guardian. The thing that stands between the weak and the hungry, armed with nothing but stubborn determination and a complete unwillingness to accept the universe's verdict on who gets to survive. I returned to my family on Thessar Prime, filed my resignation with the guild, and took a teaching position at the local academy. My children asked why I'd given up such an exciting career. I told them the truth. Because the galaxy doesn't need scouts like me anymore. It needs people who understand what humanity figured out a long time ago. That survival isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being too stubborn to give up, too clever to be outsmarted, and too brave to back down when something bigger tries to make you prey. Is that what humans are? My youngest asked. Brave? I thought about Victoria Rains, standing in the void, staring down ancient predators with nothing but confidence and a smile. I thought about her eyes and what the void serpent had seen there. Humans are survivors, I said, and they're teaching the rest of us that we can be survivors too, that we don't have to accept being prey just because something bigger and older says that's our role. My children looked confused, but they were young. They'd understand eventually. Because the galaxy was changing, one sector at a time, one confrontation at a time, and at the heart of that change were beings who'd spent their entire evolutionary history refusing to accept the universe's judgment. Beings who looked at apex predators and didn't see death sentences. They saw equals. And sometimes, on good days, they saw something that needed to learn some manners. I never saw Victoria Rains again. But I heard stories. Everyone did. Stories of humans in the dark places, making the monsters hesitate. Stories of rescue missions in impossible locations. Stories of predators learning, for the first time in millions of years, that some prey fight back and win. The galaxy's oldest predators still hunt in the darkness between stars, but now, when they encounter something small and fragile floating in the void, they pause. They remember. Because sometimes, just sometimes, that small, fragile thing is human. And humans don't do prey. They do stubborn. They do clever. They do not today, and not ever. And in a universe built on predator and prey, that changes everything.